Hello everyone, I'm Jacob Kaufman, I'm the nerd in the street, and today we are setting up Nextcloud on an Ubuntu virtual private server. Okay everybody, you've probably heard of Nextcloud before. It is server-side software that you can use to host your own cloud instance, similar to something like Google Drive. You can put your files there, but while Google Drive requires you giving your files to Google, Nextcloud you can host on your own server, so you can access your files from anywhere if you're setting this up on a web server, but you still maintain control of your files because it's your server and you're running Nextcloud, which is open source software. Nextcloud 15 was released not too long ago, so we're going to be installing that. Normally I use Debian for my personal web servers, but today I'm using Ubuntu 18.04 because I know lots of people are familiar with Ubuntu. And finally, I am doing this video using a DigitalOcean virtual private server simply because I've got a lot of credit built up on there, so it's not going to cost me anything to do this video today. However, once again, for my personal servers, I usually use Linode instead, just because they have more locations here in the United States, which is closer to me, whereas DigitalOcean has a lot more worldwide locations. I have referral links for both DigitalOcean and Linode that you can find in the description of this video, and you can use those to get a few dollars of free credit yourself so you can try this out without spending any money. But without much further ado, we'll go ahead and jump right in. This is just going to be a basic installation of Nextcloud, and we are going to take care of all of the errors, warnings, and recommended practices for installation, taking care of all the messages that show up in the Nextcloud Admin Center. So let's get to it. Okay, and here we are on the desktop. I will go ahead and open up Firefox here, and we're going to start by creating our virtual private server over at DigitalOcean.com. Once again, you can use whatever server provider you want. DigitalOcean is relatively easy to use. It's about the same ease of use as Linode and the exact same prices as well. Okay, so we will create a new droplet. And like I said, for this video, we're going to use Ubuntu 18.04 because it's a long-term support release. Lots of people are comfortable using Ubuntu. For the droplet size today, we're going to go all the way down to the $5 a month option. This is going to give us 1 GB of RAM, 25 GB of storage, 1 core of CPU, and 1,000 GB of transfer. 25 gigs is not a lot, but it is about the same amount you get with a free Google Drive account anyway. And of course, if you do want to add more storage later, you're free to do that. We'll continue down the page, and we're not going to enable any other services here, but we are going to choose a region here in the United States. Actually, I'll go New York today. We'll give ourselves a host name, Nextcloud tutorial, and we will create that droplet. So if you've never used DigitalOcean before or one of these VPS providers, they're going to email me the root password for a Linux machine as soon as it's done creating their virtual machine here. And I'm going to SSH into it. It'll be just like I've got an actual server. Alright, they've got my IP address there, so I can copy that. And I will go ahead and sign into my email here. And here they have our root password, which of course I'll change after the video's over. Actually, it's going to make me change it as soon as I log in here too. So I'll open up my terminal, drag that into frame, and we will SSH. Let me go ahead and turn off the transparency here in my terminal just for you guys to be able to see a little bit better. Or at least we'll turn the transparency down a little bit. How about we do... Alright, that's better. So we'll SSH into the IP address that was on my droplet manager there, and it's actually going to be SSH root at the IP address, because we're logging in as root. We do want to connect. And now we will copy our root password that I got in that email and paste it into our terminal right here. So I just pasted that, and it's going to require me to change it like I said, using a weak password for now, but I will change it later like I said. Okay, and now we are logged into our Ubuntu server. So we'll just sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade just to make sure that everything is up to date to start with here. And at this point I am going to move Firefox away just because we're not going to be working with it for a little while. Looks like we do have a few updates we can install, so I will sudo apt upgrade, and that will install those. And we will go ahead and apt auto remove as well, just to get rid of that message it was giving us. Okay, so now we have an up-to-date, clean Ubuntu server. Nothing is installed on this right now. The first thing we're going to do is install the Apache web server. To do that, for just a basic web server, all we have to do is type sudo apt install apache 2. That's the name of the package, and it is going to pull in some dependencies, as you'll see. So, enabling all these modules. And as soon as that's done installing, we can systemctl start Apache 2. Systemctl enable Apache 2, and what this enable is going to do is automatically start the web server whenever our system turns on. Alright, and now if we go and open up Firefox and we navigate to this IP address that we are currently SSH'd into, we will see the Apache default page telling us that our web server is installed properly. You can see if we go back to our terminal here and stop Apache 2, systemctl stop Apache 2, and we reload this, unable to connect because we stopped the server, but we'll go ahead and start it again. And there we go, so that's running. Now Nextcloud is a complicated application. It uses more than just a basic web server, so there are a few more things we need to install. For one thing, we need a database server, and for that we are using MariaDB. It is a MySQL-like server. It is completely compatible with MySQL commands, but MariaDB is a fork that was eventually created as a result of Oracle purchasing Sun Microsystems, and we're just going to use that for today. So apt install MariaDB server, we will run that. And it is going to pull in dependencies as well, including the MariaDB client, if you can see that in the scrolling text there. Okay, and that is done installing. We do need to secure the installation, so we will run MySQL secure installation, and this does need to be run as root, so use sudo if you're not already logged in as root. So this is asking us to set the MariaDB root password. This is separate from your system's root password. It's currently nothing, so we'll hit enter for none. We are going to set a root password. Once again, I'm making it insecure for this video, but that's just because this is an example. Ideally, you should use a different password for every password that I'm making here today, and write those all down somewhere safe. For the rest of these, you can mostly just accept the defaults and or type yes for everything. This script is just, like I said, securing our installation here, and now we have a secure MariaDB setup. We do need to install PHP because Nextcloud is a PHP application, so we will apt install PHP as well as the lib apache to mod PHP, which hooks PHP in with our web server, and PHP MySQL, which will hook PHP in with our MariaDB server. We'll run that, and it's going to pull in a few more things once again. Okay, and now we have that. And for the sake of this video, I'm also going to install a program called phpMyAdmin. You do not strictly need this to run Nextcloud, but it is helpful whenever you're using any PHP application that is also using MySQL databases so that you can log into your database using a GUI and see what's going on a little bit easier than the command line. So we will run apt install phpMyAdmin, and that is going to install this tool. It is going to ask us which web server we want to use. Of course, we just installed Apache 2, so we will tell phpMyAdmin to configure itself for Apache 2. You can answer yes for the database configuration just so that phpMyAdmin is usable after we're done. It's asking you what the MySQL or MariaDB root password is, so I'll provide that. This is the one you just made in that other script we ran. Okay, and as soon as that's done, you can go to your IP address /phpMyAdmin, and that is going to give you a login page. Now, we cannot log in as root right now. For one thing, Firefox is warning us that we're using an HTTP connection right now, which is not secure. We're sending our password over plain text, so don't do this in real life. But for example here, I'm also going to try logging in as root. I have just typed the correct password in, I'll click go, and you can see access has been denied for root at localhost. I did type the correct password in. I'll do it one more time just so you can see. The reason we are getting an access denied is because MariaDB disallows root login from applications like phpMyAdmin by default, just for security. It is possible to override that, but we're not going to override that today. We are going to go ahead and create our MySQL database in MariaDB. We're going to need that in a few minutes when we actually start installing Nextcloud, and then we're going to log in here in phpMyAdmin just to verify that the database is there. So for this, we are going to start up our MariaDB client. We're going to run MariaDB, and it's going to connect us up. And we're going to run create database Nextcloud. And that is going to create a database for us called Nextcloud. Next, we're going to create a user for that. So create user. We're going to call this Nextcloud as well. Identified by, and then the password we want. Once again, I'm using an insecure password for the video. We'll hit enter there, and let's try this again with quotation marks around passcode. Alright, generally it's a good idea to put quotation marks around any input you're giving MariaDB, especially when the input has special characters and things in it. So next we need to tell MariaDB that this Nextcloud user has permissions for the Nextcloud database. For that, we will type grant usage on ***, those are wildcards, to Nextcloud at localhost. identified by passcode. And this is actually just telling MariaDB that we will be allowed to access and use the database server using this account. So it accepted that. Next, we will grant all privileges on Nextcloud dot asterisk to Nextcloud at localhost. And that's going to give the Nextcloud user privileges to do anything on our Nextcloud database. We will flush our privileges just to make sure that that configuration gets applied. And now if we go to our MySQL control panel at phpMyAdmin, if we type in Nextcloud for a username and we type in our password here, you can see we are logged into phpMyAdmin because we gave ourselves privileges to access and use the database. And we do have a single database here called Nextcloud, and we are able to create tables or do whatever we want to in here. So now we have a database set up for us to use, and Nextcloud is going to utilize that. We are just going to install a few more dependencies here back in our terminal. I am taking these dependencies from the Nextcloud 15 administration manual here. You can see the admin manual actually suggests that we install Nextcloud using Ubuntu snaps. Personally, I am not a fan of snap packages at all for a variety of reasons. We're going to be installing Nextcloud manually today. I think it gives people more control, and I think it makes things easier for you, the administrator, in the long term. So we're going to come down here and take a look at just some of the other requirements here. We've already installed Apache, the MariaDB server, and libapache2 modphp, but they do just have some other packages that we are going to install, so we'll copy these one line at a time. We're using apt instead of apt-get because we're using a newer version of Ubuntu. We will go ahead and quit MariaDB. Quit. There we go. Clear our command line and apt install. Actually, these are not valid packages in Ubuntu 18.04. As you can see, it's going to say could not locate. I think if we go through here and just remove the version numbers, there we go. And those are all already installed except for PHP JSON. So we will install the JSON app there, PHP plugin that is, and we will copy the rest of these, sudo apt install, paste, and once again we will just remove the 7.0. Ubuntu used to support PHP 5 and PHP 7 at the same time. At this point, it's just moved over to PHP 7, so you don't need to specify the 7.0 anymore. Encrypt. Encrypt has been deprecated, it looks like, so we are not even going to install that. We will install the rest. Alright, so it's always a good idea to install any dependencies. You might be able to get away with not having some of these, but obviously software will work best if you install the dependencies they tell you that it needs. So next, we're going to finally actually get Nextcloud. For this, you can go to nextcloud.com and you can read all about Nextcloud, you know, go through all the different features and stuff. But we are going to click Get Nextcloud. We are going to click Download for Server. And we are going to go with the archive file here. This is going to give us all of the files for the Nextcloud application. We are going to download it and extract it into our web servers directory that it's serving. If we hover over this download link, we can see down in the bottom left that it's a zip file. You can also download as a tarball down here. I'm actually going to do that just for fun. I'm going to copy that download link. We will open up our terminal again. And right now I am in /root, which is the root user's home directory. That's fine. We're going to download here first, and then we'll move the files to our web servers directory later. So we will wget this download link. It's going to go very quickly because our DigitalOcean server has a very fast uplink to the internet. So now if I list everything in our directory, you can see we do have Nextcloud 15.0.0, and that is a tarball. We will run tar-xvf on that Nextcloud tarball to extract it. Lots of files in that archive, as you can see. And when that's finally done, we will clear our screen and we will ls-al one more time. So now we have a directory called Nextcloud. It currently has no owner. And if we go into that Nextcloud directory, we can see a number of files, including .htaccess. So these are hidden files that Apache is going to use later. We've also got things like index.php and index.html that are going to be obviously accessed later. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to move everything in this current directory that we're in, the Nextcloud directory. We're going to move it all to var www.html, which is the default directory that Apache is serving on. If we go back to our IP address here, this is the default page, as you can see. This is located within that default directory. This is about to get overwritten by what we're doing here, our move operation. Index.html here, I think, is going to overwrite the index.html that we're seeing right now here. Is this index.html or index.htm? Yeah, that's HTML. HTML is not found, so in just a moment, this page is not going to exist anymore. We're going to run this move operation like that. And now, if we ls-al, you can see there are still 2 files here because they're hidden files. They're not included in our move all operation. We will rectify that in just a moment. But now if we list everything in var www.html, you can see we've got all the other files that we just moved over there, including the directories and, everything. Now, like I said, we do have 2 dot files here still left behind. Those are important, so we will once again just move manually ./.htaccess to var www.html, and do the same thing with .user.ini. And now if we ls-al, we've got nothing. And now if we, let's go ahead and change directory to var www.html, clear our screen, and we'll go ahead and list everything here. Now we've got those dot files as well. And the last thing we're going to do, this is pretty important, we do need to set our user and group for this stuff. Right now, obviously, you can see nobody owns these files. Nextcloud is going to complain about that later, so we are going to just chown www.data, so that's Apache's user and Apache's group, everything in here, and we're actually going to do that recursively. Okay, so now if we ls-al, you can see everything is owned by www.data. Once again, we're going to have to do that 2 more times for our dot files. .htaccess and .user.ini. So ls-al, everything is owned by the web server. That is what we want. So now we can come over here to our web browser, and if we refresh this page, now we have Nextcloud. And it looks like we missed a module. PHP module GD is not installed. Actually, we definitely installed this module earlier. You remember when we typed in sudo apt install, one of the things we tried to install was php-gd, and it was already installed, so it didn't get reinstalled. We probably just need to restart our web server because we installed it and have not restarted the server since. So we will systemctl restart Apache 2, and let's see if we refresh. There we go. All right, I'm going to make this window a little bit bigger so it looks nicer on video. Okay, and we are going to create our Nextcloud admin account. I'm just going to make it called admin, once again, using an insecure password. And actually, this would be a great time to set up encryption, because you can see Firefox is currently telling me this connection is not secure. Logins entered here could be compromised. Once again, we're currently browsing over HTTP, not HTTPS. So if I were to click finish setup right now and send this password over the internet, it would be sent in plain text, and my internet service provider or people at DigitalOcean or anyone else in between me and the server would be able to tell what password I'm actually sending. So rather than doing that, let's go ahead and take this opportunity to set up SSL TLS. We're going to do that using Let's Encrypt. Now for this, we are going to need a domain name. Right now we are accessing this server at 206.189.199.243. Obviously, you don't want to have to type in an IP address every time you're accessing a server. I'm going to assume for the purposes of this video that you guys watching have purchased your own domain name that you're going to use. I've got nerdonthestreet.com, obviously. I'm going to go to my domain registrar's control panel here, and I use Hover myself. I think it's a very nice domain registrar. They do not try to upsell me. Their prices are a couple dollars more than something like GoDaddy. GoDaddy is super cheap, but of course, it's only super cheap if you're able to dig out coupons and stuff. I don't want to have to deal with hunting for all that. And they also always try and sell me extra stuff whenever I use GoDaddy. So I'm a fan of Hover. It's owned by 2Cows, which is a very large Canadian internet company. It really doesn't matter what registrar you're using, though. I'm going to go into nerdonthestreet.com here. And what you're going to have to do is go ahead and create a DNS entry. For me, I just click add a record. It's going to be an A record. Host name, we're going to call it example1. And that's going to make this example1.nerdonthestreet.com. I'll paste in my IP address here, get rid of the leading protocol. So example1 is your subdomain. If you want it to just be .com, you don't want a subdomain, then you would put at in here, or you could put www to have that be what you put before it. I'm going to use example 1 once again, and I'm going to click add record. Now at this point it might take a few hours depending on your registrar until this new record actually works. Hover usually propagates that information within a few minutes, and I'm using Google for my DNS at the moment. But depending on your DNS provider and depending on your registrar, with GoDaddy, I usually had to wait a few hours. But if I open up a terminal here, I can check whether or not that's working yet. So here's a fresh terminal on my local machine. I'm going to ping example1.nerdonthestreet.com, and you can see it's already up and running. It found that IP address. So now, if I come back to my web browser, I can go to example1.nerdonthestreet.com. And I've got Nextcloud. Once again, we are still browsing over HTTP, so for this we are going to use something called Let's Encrypt. Back here on our web server, I'll clear the screen. I'm going to type in sudo apt install certbot, and certbot is in the Ubuntu repository. It is a client for Let's Encrypt, and Let's Encrypt is a free, automated, and open certificate authority, as they call themselves on the Let's Encrypt homepage. They provide free SSL certificates. You know, a decade ago, you would have had to pay for SSL, TLS certificates for your web server. Luckily, since we've seen how important it is to encrypt your data, we've got Let's Encrypt providing free SSL certificates for a large portion of the internet right now. And you can use this yourself. We're going to use certbot, and we're going to type in certbot -- Apache. We'll hit enter, and the requested Apache plugin does not appear to be installed. So we do need to also install a package called Python certbot Apache, and that is going to make things easier for us here, because certbot is going to install the certificate for us right after it creates it, because now all we have to do is type in certbot -- Apache, and it's going to walk us through this entire process. Enter your email address. I'm going to use jacob@nerdonthestreet.com, and you do need to agree to the terms of service for this. It's trying to sign me up for the Electronic Frontier Foundation's email list. I believe I'm already subscribed. And at this point, it's telling us that there are no domains available in our Apache configuration. So I will cancel out of this. And here's what's going on at this point. var www.html is the default directory for Apache. Right now, Apache is just directing absolutely anything that it receives, any requests that it receives, it's directing them to var www.html. That's why we can use example1.nerdonthestreet.com, or we can type in that IP address from earlier. If I go and grab that again, I can put that here, and obviously this is not a domain name, but it's sending me to the same place no matter what I'm typing into my web browser, because this is the default directory. There are a couple different ways you can get around this. One way would be to create another directory for us to use for Nextcloud. Me personally, I'm just going to go ahead and add the domain name to our default directory's configuration file so that certbot will recognize the domain name we're trying to use. So I'm going to nano into etc apache 2 sites available, and we should have 000 default.config. So this is our default virtual host. You can see the document root is var www.html, and you can see this very first line here, server name, is commented out right now. We are going to uncomment that, and we are going to make this example1.nerdonthestreet.com. Now you can see here, Apache lets you know in the comment, for the default virtual host, this file, this value is not decisive as it is used as a last resort host regardless. So we are setting this server name right now to tell certbot that example1.nerdonthestreet.com is the domain name that we intend to use for var www.html. What this comment means, though, is that you'll still be able to type in anything, and as long as it resolves to this IP address, it's still going to send you to var www.html. So some people might see that as a security risk under certain circumstances. That's why you might want to consider just creating another Apache virtual host specifically for your Nextcloud installation and another document root, you know, if you want to go that far. Just for our tutorial, this is how I'm doing it, but that is something to keep in mind. I'm going to go ahead and change the server admin here to my actual email address just for good practice as well, and we'll go ahead and save that file and restart Apache. Okay. So nothing has changed with our web server, but now if we run certbot again, it should be able to tell that we have example1.nerdonthestreet.com there. We're going to leave our selection blank because there's only one option there, so it's going to select it for us. So now it's going to run through our challenge So it's proving right now that we do in fact control example1.nerdofthestreet.com. And it has created an SSL certificate for us. It's created an SSL virtual host file for us in the Apache configuration. And now you can choose here whether you want to redirect from HTTP to HTTPS or not. These options used to say easy or secure. I always picked secure anyway. Looks like they renamed the options to no redirect or redirect, which is probably more accurate anyway because it's still very easy even if we choose the secure option. So I'm going to choose the redirect option. Okay, they say congratulations, your certificate and chain have been saved, and it tells you Etsy Let's Encrypt is where all of your certificate files live, and we will need to go in here for another video I'm going to do later on the same server. Just for setting up Nextcloud though, we don't need to worry about those files. Certbot has taken care of it for us. So if we come back over to our website here and we just refresh, we're going to get redirected to HTTPS, and you can see here now we are accessing this securely and we no longer get a warning from Firefox in the password field. So we're going to type in admin and make our password. Once again, weak password. I know, it's just a video. Down here in our storage and database, this is one thing I do usually change is the data folder. If we go back to our command line here and look in our directory, there's not currently www.html data. This data directory has not been created yet. We could just let it create this data directory. Personally, this is the folder where your files are going to be saved in. So when you upload files to your Nextcloud server, this folder is where those files are physically going to be located. Now, I personally, even though Apache and Nextcloud set themselves up in such a way that you can't just go to, for this example, data is the directory, subdirectory here. So trying to access that from a web browser would look like this, example1.nerdofthestreet.com/data. If we created a directory in here, /data would be a directory we could attempt to go to. Right now it's not found. After it's created, like I said, Nextcloud and Apache will set themselves up in such a way that it's going to tell you permission denied if you try and access your data in this manner straight from the web browser without going through Nextcloud. However, even though they set themselves up like that, it still makes me pause thinking about having all of my personal data on my server in my actual web server directory. I'm not trying to serve this data after all. I'm trying to serve Nextcloud here, which I have, but I don't want my data to ever be accessed directly from the web server. So for that reason, what I normally do is I just create a directory at /Nextcloud data, and I'm going to chown www.data /Nextcloud data. And now if I go ahead and do an ls-al on my root directory, you see I've got, all my normal Linux directories, bin, boot, dev, etc, home. And then I get down here, I've got Nextcloud data. Since this is a dedicated Nextcloud server, I can just put it right on the root of my file system. It is owned by www data, and it needs to be so that Nextcloud, which is run by Apache using the user www data, can create files in here, manage the files, delete the files. You need it to be owned by that user. However, now that this is outside of my web server's directory, there's absolutely no possibility that a misconfigured Apache or a misconfigured whatever would allow anybody to access my files directly from their web browser. Without going and creating another Apache virtual host first on my server to point to /Nextcloud data. So if that makes any sense at all, then hopefully you get why I do that. If it doesn't make any sense to you, you can ignore it. But we will go ahead and change our data folder now to /Nextcloud-data, since I did just create that. Now you can see Nextcloud detects that MySQL/MariaDB is the only available database. It's the only plugin we installed for PHP. We will go ahead and type in our database user, which was Nextcloud, our database password, and the database name was also Nextcloud. Those were the things in PHPMyAdmin earlier. And now we'll just finish setup, and it's going to install Nextcloud for us. It is taking just a second. This is a very small droplet, like I said, 1 CPU core, 1 GB of RAM. But you can see after a second it does redirect us, and now we have Nextcloud installed. So this is installed and functioning. We can go and look through our different folders and things. We have Nextcloud installed, that's it. Now, like I said, for our video today, I am going to show you just a few more things. If you go into your settings, you will see here under Administration and Overview, it's going to show you setup and security warnings. Now you could just go on your merry way and use Nextcloud right now, but in order to take full advantage of all the features and to have the greatest peace of mind security-wise, you do need to pay attention to these warnings. And we're just gonna go through them one by one and fix them all. Let me go ahead and close hover here so we don't have that tab distracting me. So the first thing here, like I said, we'll just go through these one by one. The PHP memory limit is below the recommended value of 512 megabytes. This is a classic PHP configuration change, so we'll just go into our web server and we're going to nano into etc php 7.2 apache 2 php.ini. And this is the configuration file for PHP, which takes effect using the Apache web server for PHP version 7.2. It's a very long directory name, but we will nano into that file. And this is a very large file, but if we scroll down here, we can see we've got various options for PHP, and we are going to go ahead and search upload. And here's a whole section on our php.ini for handling file uploads. So we've got file uploads turned on, obviously. Our max file size by default is only 2 megabytes. You're probably gonna want files larger than 2 megabytes to be able to be uploaded. Now, some applications out there, such as FileRun, are able to break files down into, say, 2 megabyte chunks to upload. Nextcloud does not do that at this time though, so however big you want to be able to upload files, you need to make your upload max file size at least that big. We're just going to use the Nextcloud recommended minimum of 512 megabytes right now. So after you've changed that, just go ahead and save that file. We do need to restart Apache 2. And now we'll come back to our admin overview and just refresh, and that first warning should go away. And it's not quite away yet. All right. Let's head back into that file. All right, in addition to the max upload, there are 2 more things we do need to fix here. One of them is called memory_limit. So search for that. This is 128 megabytes right now. Once again, make it 512 megabytes. You can't upload a 512 megabyte file if PHP only has 128 megabytes of memory to buffer. So we will fix that. And then the last one is post max size. Our browser is going to be delivering this file via a post request, so we need to set that to 512 megabytes as well. So let's save that. Let's restart Apache 2 one more time. And now let's refresh and see if that first warning goes away. Excellent. So that warning is gone. Next up, the strict transport security HTTP header is not set to at least this many seconds. This has to do with making sure that attackers cannot force your web server to downgrade its security requirements when connecting over HTTPS to your Nextcloud installation. They say for enhanced security, it is recommended to enable HSTS as described in the security tips. So we'll open that in a new tab. And this is part of the admin manual as well. Looks like they're linking to an outdated version of the manual though. This is the Nextcloud 14 manual. We are using Nextcloud 15. I know for a fact that this is still going to work, but the Nextcloud developers should probably get on updating that link for the new version. So we will scroll down here to using HTTPS, and what we're looking for here is HTTP Strict Transport Security, that is HSTS. We want to enable this because Nextcloud recommends that we do so for security purposes. They give us the exact configuration we need to perform right here within the Apache virtual host file. So we will go into our web server, we will nano into etc Apache 2 sites enabled, and we are going to go into, it's no longer 000 default.config that we're editing. We have enabled Let's Encrypt. This file only exists to forward people to this file, so 000 default-le-ssl.config is the file we want to edit. So this is what people are actually using when they access our website. We have mod SSL installed, obviously, because we're using SSL, and this is our virtual host. We will go down underneath server name example1.nerdofthestreet.com. We are going to add the section here they're telling us to add, that is if module mod headers.c. And we will end that if module so we don't forget to do that later. And we're just going to copy their recommended config in here for one thing. Header always set strict transport security HSTS max age, which is what it was telling us it wanted, was the max age. We'll have it set that, and then we are also going to add this we recommend the additional setting preload to be added to that header. Now they actually mentioned down here that once you add this, that's actually going to signal to the internet that this domain name should always have HTTPS enabled. They recommend you only do this if you actually need to use it. I'm going to go ahead and put it in because, you know, we're all about best practices here. So we will paste that in at the end of this line, make sure you're inside the quotations there. So this is the configuration that Nextcloud truly recommends for us. So we will save that file. We will restart Apache 2 once again. Whoop. Restart Apache 2. All right. And now if we head back over to Nextcloud and refresh once again, that other yellow warning should go away. And it has not. So we just put this configuration inside an if statement that says to only run if we have mod headers installed. I think we've already got it installed. Let's try enabling it with a2 in mod headers. All right, so enabling module headers. So we already had the headers module installed, it just was not enabled, so that configuration was not taking effect because the if statement was not getting triggered. So now we can restart systemctl, restart Apache 2 once again, clear this because we're getting close to the edge of our screen there, and why don't I go ahead and move this up here too. We'll refresh one more time and see if that second yellow error goes away. All right, and that has gone. Next up, your web server is not properly set up to resolve .wellknown/caldev or /carddev. This took me a while to fix the last time I installed Nextcloud a few weeks ago for a client. Now, if we go right now to example1.nerdonthestreet.com/wellknown/caldev, it's not found. Apache is not redirecting for us. The reason that we are not getting redirected from .wellknown/caldev to the actual caldev endpoint is because Apache right now is not using our .htaccess file. So you remember earlier I made a big point to make sure that we were indeed copying or moving this .htaccess file over into our web server directory. But right now Apache's not using it. We can tell because it's not redirecting us. And if we go into this .htaccess file and we do a search for .wellknown, you can see we have our rewrite rules here that are supposed to redirect us from .wellknown/carddev and caldev to the actual locations where those endpoints are. That's how we can tell that Apache's not actually using this config file. To fix this, we'll go into, once again, nano, etc, Apache 2, sites enabled, 000-default, let's encrypt all that. We're going to come down here, and right below our if statement that we added before, we are going to add a directory statement. So this is saying for the directory of var www.html, which obviously is the directory that we have all our files in that we're serving for Nextcloud. Within that directory, we want to tell Apache options plus follow symlinks. We also want to tell it allow override all, and this allow override all, this is telling Apache, hey, look for that .htaccess file and let it override your default settings. So with that, we will save that file, restart Apache 2 right here, and now if we go and refresh this again, you see now we get to the WebDAV interface. So we'll go back to our Nextcloud settings, refresh, and those two errors should go away, and they did. Next, no memory cache has been configured. To enhance performance, please configure a mem cache if available. Now this is entirely optional. This is just for increasing performance, especially if you are using Nextcloud in a very large, heavily used environment. So we will go down to the configuring memory cache section. We will go to the updated version of this manual. We're going to be using APCU simply because it's available in most Linux distributions. It's very easy to set up. If you're doing complicated things like transactional file locking, you might have to use Redis, which is a more complex system. But APCU is the recommended option for small installations, which seems kind of strange because this entire memory caching section is for large installations, but this is for smaller, larger installations. So the point is, we're going to go to our server, we're going to install php-apcu. All right. It'll grab it from the repository there. We're going to restart Apache 2. And we're going to nano into our config.php file. It's at config/config.php within your web server directory. And we're going to add this line, memcache.local, and it's pointing to APCU on our system. This tells Nextcloud where it can go for the memcaching program. We'll put that right there, and we will exit. Now if we go back to our settings and refresh, the memory cache warning should go away. It did. And next, the PHP op cache is not properly configured. For better performance, it is recommended to use the following settings in php.ini. So let's head into php.ini and see what's going on here. That is once again at Etsy, PHP 7.2, Apache 2, php.ini. I'm going to go ahead and just search real quick for opcache.enable. And looks like that is already in our file. It is commented out right now. So they recommend that we set opcache.enable to 1, which it is set to 1 by default if we uncomment that. They recommend we enable the CLI. They recommend we set the interned strings buffer to 8, which it already had 8 typed there. We'll just uncomment it. They recommend we set the max accelerated files to 10,000, which is the default. They recommend we put the max memory consumption at 128 megabytes. They recommend we put the save comments option to 1, which is down here. And they recommend we put the revalidate frequency setting to 1. If you want to, you can just copy these and paste them in here. Since all of those things were commented out anyway, PHP would have just ignored the commented settings and used your settings that you pasted in. I just, as you saw, went through it and uncommented the settings just to leave it in the default layout that php.ini has. It really doesn't matter which way you do it, either or. We are going to save this file now. We're going to restart Apache 2. And we are going to refresh and see if that warning goes away. And it did. Finally, some columns in the database are missing a conversion to big int. Okay, so this is just a one-time thing that we need to run for our database. And I'm not sure why it didn't just run this by itself, but we'll go ahead and copy this command. Now, OCC is the CLI command for managing your Nextcloud instance. It's called OCC because it's left over from OwnCloud, I believe. As you can see, if we ls-al in our web server directory here, we've got a file called OCC, so that's what it's trying to use. If we just paste this command in, it's not going to work because our web server directory is not part of our system's path environment variable. But if we run the exact same command but make it /OCC, that tells it to use this local file in the current directory for OCC. So we'll run that. Permission denied, sudo, command not found. Okay, here's what we need to do. We need to run this OCC. If we cat out /OCC, it's a PHP file, as you can see. So we can't just run it. We need to run it in PHP. My mistake. So all we have to do is, once again, I will paste our command, and it's going to be, like I said, /, because it's in the current directory, and we're going to run it in PHP. So this is the entire command that we need to run. We will run that. Console has to be executed with the user that owns the file config/config php. All right. As you can see, it's currently telling me that even though I am the root user on the system, it is performing a check, and it's not going to let me run this without being that www data user. So we're going to do exactly what it recommends right here. We're going to sudo, and we're going to run this as Apache. So sudo as www data to use PHP to run /OCC to run this command here to convert our database. This can take up to hours depending on the number of files in your instance. I don't have very many, so we'll type yes. And it's done. Okay, that did not take hours. We are going to refresh Nextcloud now. And green check mark, all checks passed. All right, guys, that took quite a while. As you saw, it's very easy to install Nextcloud, but it does take a while to actually go through and fix all of the recommended security and setup warnings that it gives you. But this is good stuff to do if you are trying to be a good system administrator. You know, now we have full peace of mind, and we can tell our clients that their Nextcloud server is set up properly with the recommended configuration from Nextcloud themselves. I am going to make another video in the future, the near future, about setting up Collabora Online for collaborative Google Docs-like document editing on Nextcloud. That is outside the scope of this video, though. For now, we can upload files, we can download files, we can do everything that Nextcloud, everything Nextcloud is made for out of the box. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know if you have any questions down below in the comments or on the forums at nerdonthestreet.com. And finally, if this video was helpful to you, I would ask that you consider becoming a Nerd Club member at nerdclub.knots.co. Basically, you're supporting me on Patreon if you're doing this, and it would really help me out. So if this video helped you set up your personal or professional Nextcloud instance, like I said, consider giving back by joining the Nerd Club for just $3 a month. For now, though, that's everything I have to say. So I'm Jacob Kaufman, I'm the Nerd on the Street, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.